Workbook for Students, Introduction. A theoretical foundation, such as the text provides, is necessary as a framework to make the exercises in this workbook meaningful. Yet it is doing the exercises that will make the goal of the course possible. An untrained mind can accomplish nothing. It is the purpose of this workbook to train your mind to think along the lines the text sets forth. The exercises are very simple. They do not require a great deal of time, and it does not matter where you do them. They need no preparation. The training period is 1 year. The exercises are numbered from 1 to 365. Do not undertake to do more than one set of exercises a day. The workbook is divided into 2 main sections. The first dealing with the undoing of the way you see now, and the second with the acquisition of true perception. With the exception of the review periods, each day's exercises are planned around one central idea, which is stated first. This is followed by a description of the specific procedures by which the idea for the day is to be applied. The purpose of the workbook is to train your mind in a systematic way to a different perception of everyone and everything in the world. The exercises are planned to help you generalize the lessons, so that you will understand that each of them is equally applicable to everyone and everything you see. Transfer of training in true perception does not proceed as does transfer of the training of the world. If true perception has been achieved in connection with any person, situation, or event, total transfer to everyone and everything is certain. On the other hand, one exception held apart from true perception makes its accomplishments anywhere impossible. The only general rules to be observed throughout, then, are: first, that the exercises be practiced with great specificity, as will be indicated. This will help you to generalize the ideas involved to every situation in which you find yourself, and to everyone and everything in it. Second, be sure that you do not decide for yourself that there are some people, situations, or things to which the ideas are inapplicable. This will interfere with transfer of training. The very nature of true perception is that it has no limits. It is the opposite of the way you see now. The overall aim of the exercises is to increase your ability to extend the ideas you will be practicing to include everything. This will require no effort on your part. The exercises themselves meet the conditions necessary for this kind of transfer. Some of the ideas the workbook presents you will find hard to believe, and others may seem to be quite startling. This does not matter. You are merely asked to apply the ideas as you are directed to do. You are not asked to judge them at all. You are asked only to use them. It is their use that will give them meaning to you, and will show you that they are true. Remember only this: you need not believe the ideas, you need not accept them, and you need not even welcome them. Some of them you may actively resist. None of this will matter or decrease their efficacy. But do not allow yourself to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever your reactions to the ideas may be, use them. Nothing more than that is required. Part 1, Lesson 1. Nothing I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place, means anything. Now look slowly around you and practice applying this idea very specifically to whatever you see. This table does not mean anything. This chair does not mean anything. This hand does not mean anything. This foot does not mean anything. This pen does not mean anything. Then look farther away from your immediate area and apply the idea to a wider range. That door does not mean anything. That body does not mean anything. That lamp does not mean anything. That sign does not mean anything. That shadow does not mean anything. Notice that these statements are not arranged in any order and make no allowance for differences in the kinds of things to which they are applied. That is the purpose of the exercise. The statement should merely be applied to anything you see. As you practice the idea for the day, use it totally indiscriminately. Do not attempt to apply it to everything you see, for these exercises should not become ritualistic. Only be sure that nothing you see is specifically excluded. One thing is like another, as far as the application of the idea is concerned. Each of the first 3 lessons should not be done more than twice a day each, preferably morning and evening, nor should they be attempted for more than a minute or so, unless that entails a sense of hurry. A comfortable sense of leisure is essential. Hey everyone, welcome back to A Course in Miracles Book Club. I'm Phil.
And I'm Annalicia.
And today we're going to go over the workbook. We'll get into the introduction in the first lesson. So let's dive in. Okay, so introduction, I think when you first read it, it's very, I don't know if jarring is the right word, but it's very clear, it's very direct, but it also comes across as very simple, but not easy to do. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah. So it was jarring for you, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give me? I'm just curious. Like, what is a little more detail on what was jarring?
Just how direct and clear Jesus is about what works. He says, and I think you wrote this down too, but it is doing the exercises is what will make the goal of the course possible.
Yeah.
An untrained mind can accomplish nothing. He's
Yes.
just very direct of like, if you're not training your mind, right, in the correct principles and thinking the right way, you accomplish nothing.
Yes.
Right, you get nothing.
What do you think about starting at the end of the introduction? Because I think that was the most jarring for me, or shocking. So it says like, it's like the paragraph, something along the lines of like, is this hard to believe? And then he's like, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Will you read that actually?
Yeah, that too.
Maybe
So,
talk about that.
Some of the ideas the workbook presents you will find hard to believe, and others may seem to be quite startling. This does not matter. You are merely asked to apply the ideas as you are directed to do. You are not asked to judge them at all. You are asked only to use them. It is their use that will give them meaning to you, and will show you that they are true. Remember only this: you need not believe the ideas. You need not accept them. You need not even welcome them. Some of them you may actively resist. None of this will matter or decrease their efficacy. But do not allow yourself to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever your reactions to the ideas may be, use them. Nothing more than that is required.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's like jarring to our ego's sense of self. Like, There's a really healthy humility in this. Like, because I think it kind of goes back to the first conversation we had about free will, where sometimes I think we have like the ego's version of free will in our mind, which gives us this pseudo sense of power, but it's not where our real power lies. I think our real power lies in whether or not we're willing to align with the realities of the universe, right? The principles of Mother God.
Right.
And I feel like that's coming through here. He's kind of like, it doesn't matter if you resist it. Just try to practice it because it works.
Yeah.
It's what works.
Yeah, like you don't have to be good at it. You don't have to necessarily do it a correct way. And I think the course always talks about just a little willingness. And we talked about, I think, this in the last episode. Like, it doesn't take much. Like, just do the exercises as intended, read the words, practice, and that's all it takes, right? Nothing more than that is required. Like, it's just so simple. But yeah, it is jarring to like, you may find this hard to believe. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? None of these things that you want to believe matter. Your judgment of these ideas doesn't matter.
And I think there's an important distinction now that we're kind of speaking this out that I feel like should be made, because I think in a lot of like high demand, high control religious groups, there's a similar essence of like, it doesn't matter what you like, but there's a giving your power over. Where this is not saying like your intuition doesn't matter. This is not saying so in the difference between those groups and this, in my opinion, is those groups are trying to lead you away from your intuitive knowing. And what is being said here is this text / this workbook is trying to help you dissolve the blocks that are keeping you from hearing your intuitive knowing.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think that's an important distinction. Otherwise, we might think anybody who says something like this to us is warranted in saying that. Like, doesn't matter. But I think because this text, the entire goal is for it ultimately to be self-study and for you to come back to yourself, never to give your power over to anybody else. That's a big distinction, right? Yeah. And I think there is what Jesus, if you believe Jesus is being channeled here, is asking you to give over is that false sense of power that you have.
Yeah.
Your ego's versions of things that are keeping you blocked from your good. What maybe a high control group would be asking you to give over is your actual feelings and intuition. And so I think that's why I think it's powerful and funny versus like scary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it's important for us to make those distinctions and have that discernment in place.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just talks about, again, it just aligns with the goal of the text. So as you understand the text.
Yes.
Yeah, and I like that he says the exercises are very simple. They don't require a great deal of time, and it does not matter where you do them.
Yeah.
There's no preparation. The purpose of the workbook is to train your mind in a systematic way to a different perception of everyone and everything in the world.
Mm.
So all these ways that we've been conditioned, and the judgments and the beliefs that we come up with that are blocks to love. Mm-hmm. It's just removing that. And it's a very simple way. I mean, simple is the best way. And he's so clear and direct and confident about, like, this is it. It doesn't take more than what you think it does.
Yeah. And I think even, going, along the lines of jarring, I think if I'm honest with myself, that training, what you just read, the training in a systematic way, training your mind in a systematic way, probably was and maybe still is a bit jarring for me, because I think I had this belief that I think I'm unlearning at this point, that we weren't trained in a systematic way. So what am I trying to say? Like I think throughout all the healing work that I've done, I've more and more awakened to the reality that your mind, your psyche, your nervous system is conditioned.
Yeah, right.
There's no neutral going on. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So like the culture we live in, the subcultures we take part of, the families, the friend groups, the schools, the institutions, the organizations, the media, everything is conditioning, is training our psyche, is training our mind. And more and more, P.S., when I hear mind in the course, and this is just my interpretation of it, but because I've done so much healing, like along the lines of like using my body as also a healing tool, so like more somatic healing, I think of mind more like your entire nervous system that goes throughout your body. Yes. So I think there's like an awakening in here, like, hello, you weren't trained neutrally. So we have to untrain you. We have to train you in a systematic way out of a harmful training. Yes. Versus like the fantasy thought I think I had before is just like, well, I'm fine. And this is just how it is. And like, like not wanting to wake up to the harmful ways that I was trained. And then I think, and then participate in those perspectives. And then I harm others. You know what I mean? There's a lot to awaken to when you get into the reality of things. So now I think more and more I see that statement, like training your mind in a systematic way, as comforting. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, okay, I can train myself out of harmful ways. But I think there's been many stages in my journey where it was a bit jarring to hear that, because then I have to acknowledge that I'm not just this neutral person
Right.
walking around. I have biases and all these things
Yeah.
that were conditioned into me that might be hurtful to others and myself.
Yeah, and even I like how it says, it's divided into two main parts: the dealing with the undoing of the way you see now, and again, that's kind of the jarring part of like how you're seeing now isn't correct perception,
Yes.
right? You've kind of been trained away from true perception, and this has a systematic way of bringing that back to you.
Yes. Yeah. It kind of goes back to like that idea that you talked about, I think in the first episode, where we were talking about right-mindedness.
Yeah.
That's similar to like true perception, right? Like the truth is the truth.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean each of us don't have our own specific like experiences of the truth. Like I think it comes out in different forms, right? There's a lot of expansiveness in the truth, but the truth is principled. It is the truth. So there's a right way of thinking if you want to align with the truth, and then there's a wrong way of thinking. That's not a value judgment. That's just like an accurate way to label the thinking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a true perception, and then there is not true perception. I think it distinguished like the way the world trains you or something. And I think like it's making me think, I know I've mentioned Bashar before on this channel already, but that's because a lot of his principles align with this. And the similarity here is he often talks about how there's positive or negative energy. And he always says, this is not a value judgment. This is not I'm not morally saying you're positive or you're negative. He says positive energy integrates, negative energy like disassociates. It, what's the word I'm looking for? It compartmentalizes, it represses, it separates actually is the word I'm looking for. Yes. So he's able to almost read the energy and be like, well, if it's an integrating energy, it's a positive energy. This is not a value judgment. It is just an actual principle nature of the universe. If it's a separating, repressing, compartmentalizing energy, it's a negative energy. And I get a very similar essence. And that's probably the jarring part of the course, right? Is like, is they're just like, they're actually speaking. So I guess I'm saying Bashar and Jesus are actually speaking like, here are the principles. And I think in our culture, we're so used to like morality being used to manipulate our behavior. We're not used to just like things being labeled accurately and then dealing with that. Yeah. We're used to like things being labeled inaccurately and then all these veils being put up and then being kind of kept in our place with shame. That there is like and maybe the jarring is just kind of like shocks those veils or something where it's like, this is what's actually going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that he talks about like, the exercises help you to generalize it to everyone and everything. There's nothing that exempt from this. And so you mentioned the biases that we grow up with. Like, it's not, you have to look at those. Mm-hmm. Those are not apart from it. These things are like, well, it maybe doesn't apply to this or this situation or those people. It applies to everything and everyone. And that the course really preaches equality. Yeah, right? It's all the same.
Like if it is the truth, it can be generalized.
Yeah.
If it's not, I think it might say something like that in the course at some point.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Yeah, if it's the truth, it can be like that's a way of knowing whether or not something is the truth. Can this be generalized easily to many areas or all areas of my life? Okay, then it must be a root level principle of how true perception or what true perception is of what right-minded thinking looks like.
Yeah. All right. Anything else with the introduction?
I think before we jump into lesson 1, I just like want to take a moment to acknowledge you listening. If you're at this point where you're contemplating starting the workbook, it's a really powerful place to be. And I just want to like congratulate you and thank you so much for potentially choosing us to be on your journey with you. Because I think there is a difference between the text and the workbook, not in principles, but in what you're willing, but in practice. And I think what we practice is what we ultimately then begin to actually emanate, right? It goes from theoretical to actually living these principles. And so this is like a powerful shift to go from text to workbook. Even if you're reading the text at the same time, but a willingness to actually put these things into practice. And it's making me think of a time in my life where I came across a Lao Tzu quote. And this was also in my early 20s. It was after I had been studying the course for about a year. And I found the quote, it goes like this. It says, "Don't think you can attain total awareness and whole enlightenment without proper discipline and practice. This is egomania. Appropriate rituals channel your emotions and life energy towards the light. Without discipline to practice them, you will tumble constantly backwards into the darkness."
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and I think when I first found that quote, speaking of jarring, I think it was a bit jarring because I thought I was like, kind of wanted to like, love and light everything, and versus like, you may have to like get down to business with different rituals and practices, right? Yeah. But I also think they're similar to what we spoke about here with the introduction of the workbook. There's also a comfort in it. There's a relief in it. Yeah. Because you realize like, I'm not just expected to like be this perfect love and light person with these true perceptions. I have the right and responsibility to like go through some training here and to be guided and to allow myself rituals in my life that help me attain more and more that North Star goal of having true perception more than I have now, but realizing like I'm not just expected to like jump some abyss that's super abstract. Right. Like that there's this like training the same way, like if you are not on a fitness journey and you decide you want to run a marathon or something really extreme, like it would be really bizarre to think you would just like the next day run the marathon. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and it would be really comforting to be like, okay, this person has done this journey and they've done it in this amount of time. And here's the steps they followed to prepare themselves for this. And I think there's some comfort in that with the workbook, that there are practices we can put into place to help us with this like big goal of just becoming a more loving person, a person who's aware of love being given by the universe and is able to offer that to others. So I'm hoping, along with maybe being jarred, you're also feeling some relief. And I also, like I said, just want to acknowledge you for taking this step, and thank you so much for, being on this journey with us.
Yeah, if I can just add in quick. So I love this idea of the practice, and as a sports psychology consultant, like that's huge to me, that the process, the practice. And I think our society and our world really get caught up in the end result, what we actually see. And I think one thing that's great about the course is it talks about seeing correctly. Right? So can we see that these great athletes or these great spiritual people have practices in place that help them get there? Yes. Nobody is born with that, and it just happens. Right. And so, yeah, I really like that you brought that up. All right, anything else introduction-wise?
I think let's head into the first lesson, shall we?
Okay, so I think in true Course in Miracles fashion, lesson 1 kind of comes at you. I don't know if fast or heavy is the way, but nothing I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place means anything. Wow. Like it just starts with the bare bones, I think, of perception, true perception.
It really does, doesn't it?
I like that it says it's not arranged in any order. There's no allowance for what it's applied to. It lists, right, different things, your body, items, a shadow. And so everything is contained in this idea. Yeah. Everything that we see, that we perceive, it's all included.
And I think that's why it's helpful to have this introduction where it says, like, it doesn't matter if you resist this, you're still doing the practice. Right. Because I think there's going to be resistance for all of us that comes up when it's like, that, nothing means anything. Like I'm sitting here looking at cut sunflowers in our kitchen. And I'm like, but they're so cute. And I planted them and they're my little like sunflower babies. And they're like, that was the first thing I looked at when it was like, you said nothing in this room means anything. And so there's resistance, right? Because I have this whole memory with them and I have a perception of their beauty that means something. Like it's the sunflower is more beautiful than the trash. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it is nice. So I think it's nice to know that we can have that resistance come up. And like it says in the introduction, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just a willingness to practice is what matters.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the course is not saying don't infuse your life with joy and it's just saying we got to, like you said, we've got to like get to the bare bones. We've got to like of perception to help you undo perceptions that are not allowing you to accept the joy and beauty of life.
Yeah.
So it's not saying like go around the rest of your days and be like nothing means anything.
Yeah.
It's just like for today, this lesson, we're going to practice this thought for the purpose of aligning with true perception, which includes joy and beauty. And we have to kind of undo some things. This idea that something might really mean something is a lot of times, for example, like in our culture, we've been trained, like, well, let's just talk about like actual beauty standards, right? So we've been trained like, well, if your body looks like this, and P.S. the beauty standards is always changing, but then it really means something. It really means I'm beautiful or not beautiful, right? And so I think but that's not actual beauty. Do you know what I mean? And that's not true perception. Yeah. And so I think sometimes we don't realize how much our mind and nervous systems go down these like very rooted paths. Yeah. Where we think that's just how it is. Right. And I feel like this is trying to like pull us back and be like, okay, a lot of what you've learned of like, oh, this is just beauty, or this is just love, or this is just whatever, kind of needs to be reined in. Yeah. And like you said, there needs to, or this is kind of giving just straight at the foundation of the foundation. Yeah. Starting to retrain in the direction towards true perception. Yeah. I like that. Just understanding where this belief comes from of these beauty standards or whatever it is, where that comes from. And I like, to me, like get to the bare bones. Like nothing I see in this room means anything. I feel like it allows for us to then really get to things that do bring joy for us, right? Because again, it's not saying don't enjoy anything ever, or just because it means nothing doesn't mean you can't enjoy it, or So for me, it really allows us to again get that sense of joy from the things that we want to choose to get joy from. That's so true. And then also by saying that it's also gets you closer to true joy, right? Yeah. Not exploiting others, hoarding money, or whatever it is. Yes. Right. That's not joy, but gets you closer to those things. And then I also like that it says, "Do not become ritualistic." Because again, you read this and you think, in order to believe this, I've got to apply it to everything. And Jesus knows that we're not that good at this, so he's just like, don't become ritualistic. Hey guys, you have a tendency to be a bit neurotic. like this isn't a thing where you have to sit for 2 hours and drill it in your head. This is just like something comes up, you notice, you can say, hey, that chair doesn't mean anything. Right, and that's all it is. It's a simple practice, rather than like, okay, I've got to sit for 2 hours in the morning, in the evening, and try really hard at it. Yes. Right, and I think he says it throughout the workbook or the text, like, don't put so much effort in. Yes. Right, that's the ego thinking that you can really control things through a lot of effort. And then he also says, be sure you don't specifically exclude something, right? So you see something that maybe upsets you, or you really enjoy, but you refuse to say that thing actually means something. I'm not going to say that doesn't mean anything. Yeah. Because I care about that person, or I like the way that looks. Mm-hmm.
and so you exclude it. So he does a great job of just laying out lesson one
Mm-hmm.
of how the workbook is going to go and the mentality
Mm-hmm.
that's going to carry forth.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I love that you brought up that ritualistic part, where I think what I like about the workbook too is it's like onward. It's like we're not just sitting on this lesson for months and years.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, next lesson.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's not obsess about these things. Let's just bring that willingness
Yep.
to it. And by practicing it, you're saying like, I am willing to see things differently because I do feel like this really matters and this is really different.
Yeah.
And this is, you know what I mean? And I think you mentioned the word care. Like you really care about them.
Yeah.
And so that might be a resistance to saying that. And I think it goes back to what we said, like, this isn't about like trying to train beauty and love and care out of you. I think it's been my experience. It actually taps you into what true care is
Yes.
more and more, because so much of what we have internalized is untrue about some of those big concepts like care and love, kindness, beauty, so on and so forth. And something, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it made me think of identity. Like how this is a like spiritual text, of course, and a spiritual process and practice. And there is just like a level of like self-discovery that it allows.
Yeah.
Because we've been so trained into thinking of ourselves in certain ways. And that can include like, well, I really like this. You know, I really like this sport, or and sometimes that is true.
Right.
And sometimes it isn't.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Because we are not even aware of why we might have an attraction to something.
Yeah.
And so I think it helps us get to kind of just like slow down our like, again, neural pathways to think this is really important and that's really important to me. And it just kind of like brings us back so that more and more each of us can discover what it is that is uniquely important to us. So like the irony, the paradox is, as it's trying to just kind of like have us think more generally and get to the bare bones, like you said, it also eventually, it's been my experience, it helps us understand who we are uniquely and specifically intended to be, the gifts we're intended to give, the preferences that we have. But first we have to be willing to be like, okay, I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing to align true perception. I'm willing to say that person that I care a lot about might not mean anything.
Right. Yeah.
And that is actually aligning me with care.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, because we're all a unique expression of God. And so there is something unique about us in what we enjoy and the skills and talents that we have.
Yes.
And this gets us closer to really identifying those and using those in the best way. Last thing, again, just for along the point of Jesus keeping it simple. The first 3 lessons, you know, don't do them more than twice a day, right? Maybe morning and evening, and not for more than a minute.
Like, that's his instructions.
He understands how simple we need it because of how we've been conditioned, and so he just lays it forth so clearly, right?
Yeah,
no more than 2. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. He's not. I don't mean to interrupt, but he's just like, he's not even saying like, you know, just do it at least a minute. He's saying don't do it more than this, like, or your neurotic tendencies are going to come in. Like he's helping. Like it's so beautiful because he's giving a practice and a gentle discipline. Yeah. But coupling it with like just chill a little bit.
Yeah, because he knows that we've been conditioned to be like, oh, if I can do it 5 times a day for 10 minutes at a time, then I'm really going to make progress. Then God will
give me some really good big gold stars or something.
Yeah. And he's just like, no, I understand your tendencies. So no more than twice a day. Yeah. No more than a minute. But then he's also just like, unless that minute makes it feel like that's a sense of hurry. Yeah. So now he gives you kind of a cue as to find out if you're trying to rush through things and get things done and not really be present with them. And so he does a marvelous job of laying this out and teaching this lesson and just giving us everything we need very clearly.
It's so true. And there's a coherence in it that like Mama God is not like there's a kindness and gentleness to that
Yeah,
presence.
yeah.
And so even in the ritual, in the discipline, in the practice, he's doing whatever he can to just kind of soothe. Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
do what you can.
Yep.
Just don't do more than this. Like it's just a very soothing essence. I mean, the clarity is jarring, but the essence
Yes, right.
is very soothing. Like
Yeah.
just do. It's like you talked about with the Holy Spirit once, you know, last episode or the one before. It's just like a perfect coach.
Yeah.
Just, you know,
Right.
assuring.
Yeah, yeah.
And kind.
Yep. Yeah. And then the last line in the lesson is, a comfortable sense of leisure is essential.
Oh.
Like if there's no better way to end a lesson, I feel like, as far as trying to give us the information about how do we become this person who can remove the blocks to love and see with true perception.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a comfortable sense of leisure is
It's
essential.
not through tension, is it?
Yeah, right. Like you can't just like strive and power your way through this, right?
Yeah.
Like just be present, be comfortable, have a sense of leisure. It's so good. I really love it.
Yeah. It makes me think of your golf game. You always talk about how basically almost everything you're doing with your how you manage your game is to relieve tension so that your body has that comfortable sense of leisure, so it can move through your swing in a way that provides the best results. Like it's all the things you do are about like dissipating that tension. Like the tension is the problem, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that is the case that I guess that can be generalized, right? In any area of life, the tension is the problem. And I think as I'm speaking that out, I'm realizing basically our culture trained us the opposite way, that like, if you're tense, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Like if you must be striving hard if there's tension, and you must be, and he's just like dispelling all of that in the first lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. Golf wise, tension, it's swing flaws. That's where they come from. And everybody wants to focus on the position of the arm, and nobody really dives into like, well, how tense are you feeling?
Yeah.
How anxious are you feeling? Because that's where it comes from. And so, I try to remove that as best I can.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, if you don't have anything else to add, we're going to put a wrap on lesson 1.
Let's do it. Let's put a wrap on it.
And again, thank you for joining us.
We're so excited for you that you are beginning this journey. So honored that you are tuning in to our conversations. And as you work through this workbook, we really do wish you a comfortable sense of leisure.
Workbook for Students, Introduction. A theoretical foundation, such as the text provides, is necessary as a framework to make the exercises in this workbook meaningful. Yet it is doing the exercises that will make the goal of the course possible. An untrained mind can accomplish nothing. It is the purpose of this workbook to train your mind to think along the lines the text sets forth. The exercises are very simple. They do not require a great deal of time, and it does not matter where you do them. They need no preparation. The training period is 1 year. The exercises are numbered from 1 to 365. Do not undertake to do more than 1 set of exercises a day. The workbook is divided into 2 main sections. The first dealing with the undoing of the way you see now, and the second with the acquisition of true perception. With the exception of the review periods, each day's exercises are planned around one central idea, which is stated first. This is followed by a description of the specific procedures by which the idea for the day is to be applied. The purpose of the workbook is to train your mind in a systematic way to a different perception of everyone and everything in the world. The exercises are planned to help you generalize the lessons so that you will understand that each of them is equally applicable to everyone and everything you see. Transfer of training in true perception does not proceed as does transfer of the training of the world. If true perception has been achieved in connection with any person, situation, or event, total transfer to everyone and everything is certain. On the other hand, one exception held apart from true perception makes its accomplishments anywhere impossible. The only general rules to be observed throughout, then, are: first, that the exercises be practiced with great specificity, as will be indicated. This will help you to generalize the ideas involved to every situation in which you find yourself, and to everyone and everything in it. Second, be sure that you do not decide for yourself that there are some people, situations, or things to which the ideas are inapplicable. This will interfere with transfer of training. The very nature of true perception is that it has no limits. It is the opposite of the way you see now. The overall aim of the exercises is to increase your ability to extend the ideas you will be practicing to include everything. This will require no effort on your part. The exercises themselves meet the conditions necessary for this kind of transfer. Some of the ideas the workbook presents you will find hard to believe, and others may seem to be quite startling. This does not matter. You are merely asked to apply the ideas as you are directed to do. You are not asked to judge them at all. You are asked only to use them. It is their use that will give them meaning to you, and will show you that they are true. Remember only this: you need not believe the ideas, you need not accept them, and you need not even welcome them. Some of them you may actively resist. None of this will matter, or decrease their efficacy. But do not allow yourself to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever your reactions to the ideas may be, use them. Nothing more than that is required. Part 1, Lesson 1. Nothing I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place, means anything. Now look slowly around you and practice applying this idea very specifically to whatever you see. This table does not mean anything. This chair does not mean anything. This hand does not mean anything. This foot does not mean anything. This pen does not mean anything. Then look farther away from your immediate area and apply the idea to a wider range. That door does not mean anything. That body does not mean anything. That lamp does not mean anything. That sign does not mean anything. That shadow does not mean anything. Notice that these statements are not arranged in any order and make no allowance for differences in the kinds of things to which they are applied. That is the purpose of the exercise. The statement should merely be applied to anything you see. As you practice the idea for the day, use it totally indiscriminately. Do not attempt to apply it to everything you see, for these exercises should not become ritualistic. Only be sure that nothing you see is specifically excluded. One thing is like another, as far as the application of the idea is concerned. Each of the first 3 lessons should not be done more than twice a day each, preferably morning and evening. Nor should they be attempted for more than a minute or so, unless that entails a sense of hurry. A comfortable sense of leisure is essential.